This morning I'm out at our neighbor's field, which is just a few houses down from where we live, where they generously let us start growing some food and crops in their wide open full sun field. Very different context than what we've got in our little intimate and semi-wooded half acre. And so this morning I thought I would do an update on our garlic, some of the nursery work we're doing here, some of the annuals, and some work towards the idea of winter squash. So stick around. First thing that's pretty darn exciting to share is where the garlic currently is. The other day we had some lovely friends, Holly and Megan. Thank you so much for coming out. They helped us harvest pretty much every last scape on the hardneck garlic. We were experimenting with some different systems of cracking them at the stem versus pulling. So we'll see how that all works. But we were able to donate around maybe 40 or 50 pounds of scapes, and Sasha's going to process the rest into pickled scapes and ferments and the like. Long story short is it's looking like our garlic crop is on track to be a wonderful, abundant, luscious crop this year. So hopefully we'll have lots and lots of seed for sale this fall. It's pretty lovely to see this early in the season. So it's mid-June now. We've got another 5 weeks before we harvest, and for the stems to be this size already, I think bodes really well for the size of what these seed garlic heads will be. I think part of the reason why the seed grew as well as it did is because in the fall we put a lot of effort into digging out walkways and building the beds. So you can see they're very textured, they're very three-dimensional, and that made for a very, very loose topsoil. And by filling those hollowed out channels with leaf bags in the fall, it made for a slow release fertilizer of mineral and a great way for a heavy rain to be held in proximity of the roots so they can drink as much as they'd like after a rain but without drowning. Translated into some beautiful heads so far. The northern side here is also all garlic. This one's not as big or green and lush, maybe it's just a different variety. But we also have where they're much shorter and much lighter. You can see a strip through here and another strip on the far end. These are all different varietals of softneck. We bought in 6 to 8 different named varieties in the fall, just so we can start getting a little bit more diversity beyond soft neck and hard neck, which I'm fine with if that's what we land on, but it'd be neat to have some name types. And simple little trick for differentiating between one variety and another was to have a little strip in between of some other species of plant. So in this case, the one variety of softneck was planted. A couple of yastaberry cuttings were stuck in there. We're also serving nursery needs. Another variety of softneck, some more yastaberry. You get the idea, right down the line. And then here's a variety of softneck with elderberry in between. And so it's a fun way to have different nursery things happening, kind of break up the field a little bit, add a little bit more resilience and diversity rather than just having one contiguous exclusive block of garlic. This is about as monocultural as I think we'll ever get. And for the scale that we're working on here, as far as the seed we're growing, I mean, we're into the many thousands of heads now. From a management perspective of harvesting scapes and harvest and mulch, we kind of need to do it in a simple way. But hopefully we'll find some other ways to diversify. Last season in these interior beds, we were growing corn, which came up pretty well for a drought year. And the first year we were growing, we're pleased enough, and lots of sunflowers. But we're also doing a little bit of nursery work early on. And so you can see this luscious green row in front of me of tropical looking little friends are all honey locust. These were planted pretty much exactly 1 year ago, first or second week of June last year, and they grew really nicely. In the fall, we ran out of time to dig them all up and heal them in. Over winter, a lot of them were chewed back by rabbits, and in fact, you can see like there's a little nubbin right there. So now they're resprouting a little bit thicker and fuller, and so this fall we'll make sure to get most of them. But it's neat to see with perennial tree crops and shrubs grown from seed, if you have enough of them growing and they get hammered by rabbits or deer over winter, you can just let them stay in the bed and grow a second year. They'll have a way stronger root system for it. They'll be a little bit bushier, but by the fall we should have some incredibly luscious second year honey locust available. You can see on the south side here, we lucked out in one of our compost pickups, there were black Spanish round radish that were getting tossed. They were kind of moldy, a little bit on the other end of things, but they had green tops. And so we pushed these radishes. I don't want to dig them out. Well, you can see one here. We pushed them in rather than feeding them to the chickens on the south side of the honey locust, where nitrogen's being fixed, I think, or at least some fertility is being generated by these trees. We now are growing out these radishes with the idea that they'll green up, they'll make a really nice flower stalk, and we can collect seed, hopefully in time for a fall sowing of black Spanish round radish. And rather than buying a seed pack, we just are going to facilitate way more seeds for free and actually have them grow in the landscape. Once we harvest the seeds, we can actually still give them to the chickens, but get a few thousand radishes from seed in exchange. We're doing an experiment this year that I'd be excited to hear what folks think of. Maybe you've done something similar or you've got some feedback. But you can see, so this is the southernmost edge of this field, and we mirror this on the northernmost edge. Earlier in the season, I went through with a round bale of hay and mulched super deeply the vegetation right at the boundary between the mowed laneway and the edge of our garden plot. So it started holding the weeds down and really holding good moisture and generating some great habitat for worms. And the other day when our friends Holly and Megan were here, they helped us fill crates of compost from our chicken yard and simply part the hay periodically. Basically every 3 feet or so, the hay was pulled aside to get down to the ground, loaded with red wigglers, a little bit of really lean and pale weed and grass seeds left. We dumped in about 5 gallons of compost into each one of those nests. They look like bird nests. And thumbed in Waltham butternut squash seeds. So every 3 feet there are a few winter squash seeds pushed into pure compost with deep, deep mulch all around. Our hope is they come up strong, they grow beautifully, and by the 3rd week of July, so in about 4 to 5 weeks, this row of garlic, in fact both rows of garlic, will be harvested, which will leave a blank area. We're hoping that the vines will be at a stage where we can then aim the vines into this bed, cover the vines a bit with soil to let them root into this bed so they get more strength, and have this edge as well as this bed be completely filled with winter squash vines and hopefully a really strong crop. The further bed will transplant in cabbages or seed out parsnips or black Spanish round radish if the seed comes to fruition in time. And last night, Sasha and I did the same exact pattern here on the north side. Every 3 feet, pull the hay aside, wad of compost, some butternut seed pushed nice and into that moist, rich compost, and they'll be managed along this edge and then trained to fall into and spread through the garlic bed closest to them. And then the next one in can be reserved for a follow-up sowing of oats or carrots or beets or fall radish or cabbage. So trying to think through the arc of the garlic comes out and immediately someone else goes in to occupy that space and keep the soil bare for as minimal a time as possible. I think this update video is going long enough, so I'll wrap it up here, just give a hint of what's to come, and we'll do an update as they work out. This bed is all river locust, Amorpha fruticosa, and Senna hebecarpa, so more nursery nitrogen fixers. We found that the crops weren't that amazing growing in here last year, so growing nursery crops that fix atmospheric nitrogen felt very useful. We've got a whole bunch of annual onions growing in here, some transplants from our lovely friend Eric down in the Hudson Valley. A link to his wonderful nursery is in the description below. But we've got hot peppers, chard, there's eggplant, there are persimmon seeds, there are pawpaw seeds, there's transplants of black walnuts and hazelnuts, and then an entire row of grain amaranth, which was, we worked this up with the electric BCS, so it's very deep, very loose raised soil, nicely mulched, and hopefully that fills out. And then from our planting of corn that was here last year, we saved the 4 ears that were the largest and most colorful, and that's who went into all of this. So lots of different plants happening in a small space, very different context than most of our gardens. Straight rows in the full sun. It looks like a normal quote-unquote farm almost, but We don't have irrigation out here. We did do tillage with the rotary plow on our electric BCS in the spirit of building really deep, permanent raised beds. So these should remain as permanent walkways, these as permanent beds here on out. Hopefully our neighbor will find that what we're doing is compelling enough to let us keep farming here. Anyway, there's our experiment. We'll give an update in a month or two. How do these squash perform? How do they work as far as getting into these garlic beds? Let us know. Do you have questions or feedback of different ways you think this should have happened, or similar experiments that worked or completely failed? And how's your gardening going this year? Take care.